Panama's foreign ministry says a plane carrying 4 former Latin American presidents has not been allowed to take off. That's after their destination country, Venezuela, closed its airspace. The former Panamanian, Mexican, Costa Rican and Bolivian presidents were planning on observing Sunday's presidential election in Venezuela. Caracas, however, denies that it prevented the former leaders from entering. President Nicolás Maduro is seeking a third 6-year term in office and is facing his toughest electoral challenge in decades.
These Venezuelan bolivares aren't worth much these days. It's US dollars that are in high demand. The days of food and petrol shortages may be behind them, but the fragile economy and the devastating impact on Venezuela have been central to these elections. Yolisette Pimental is a social community leader. She, like many Venezuelans, experiences the impact of the country's sky-high inflation.
Even though the dollar rate does not go up, prices go up constantly and daily. One day you may have money for food, and maybe you do not have money the next day. One day I may have money to pay for transportation, and the next day I may not. You have to decide between personal items or food. So that's the day-to-day situation we live in.
Economic concerns echoed by mechanic Carlos Alamo.
We used to have everything. Now we lack so much. It's pushed us to go out and look for money, and that has changed things a lot. But enough is enough. We have to give someone else the opportunity to see if they do it well or badly.
But change is dependent on President Nicolás Maduro, who has ruled Venezuela since 2013. Since then, he's overseen an economic collapse, the mass emigration of millions of Venezuelans, crushed protests against him, and survived international isolation and sanctions. What's unclear is whether he would relinquish control in the case of a defeat in Sunday's election.
I am the only candidate who has the support of the people's power and the communities. Because I am the only candidate who has the strong support of the Venezuelan military.
But polls show the support of the majority of the electorate firmly tilted in favour of Edmundo González Urrutia, the main opposition presidential candidate. The former diplomat has been attending rallies with opposition leader María Corina Machado. She was banned earlier this year from running for the job of president. Their priorities are to restore trust in Venezuela's institutions, improve the country's economy, and welcome back the millions who fled Venezuela's financial collapse.
It's time for Venezuela to find reconciliation among Venezuelans. Enough shouting, enough insults. It's time to come together.
Challenges that Venezuelans hope will be dealt with by the person who leads their country after the elections.
Earlier, DW's Oscar Schlenker joined us from Caracas, and he told us what the polls are saying ahead of tomorrow's election in Venezuela.
Well, almost all of the opinion polls are very clear that Edmundo González Urrutia has 20% lead on Nicolás Maduro. However, that does not necessarily spell out victory for the opposition. It's the first time in years all the opposition united is not boycotting these elections. And they are going to be very vigilant at the voting centers because although voter fraud is hard to pull off with the machines, there are still many tricks that we've seen before, like assisted voting, coercion, and other tactics from the government. So although the polls show a majority for the opposition, the Electoral Council has the final say of the results. So in this case, the opposition witnesses in each voter center will take center stage when the results come in to verify if their receipts matches the final result.
Well, we did mention that some prominent election observers were barred from entering the country. So is there any hope that this election can be free and fair?
Well, the Electoral Council head, as I said, is openly Chavista and pro-government. And we have seen a number of obstacles and persecution towards the opposition during this campaign. It has not been, up to now, fair and free process. So it was expected that they would not allow the opposition's international allies in the country. These regional leaders were not invited by the government, and they knew they were going to meet some obstacles here. But it's part of this pressure to allow more freedoms in Venezuela. I mean, this past month, we have counted over 80 arbitrary arrests in under a month. Media outlets have been blocked and censored, including Deutsche Welle a few months back. We have seen obstacles of all kinds towards the opposition and independent media. It has been a campaign entirely run on social media. But the sentiment is that despite all of this, the voting machines are fair and are going to give out receipts. And with that hope, the opposition base is confident to win and demonstrate their victory in these elections.
That was Oscar Schlenker, DW's correspondent in Caracas. Many thanks indeed for your reporting.